Somewhere in a government office in 1999, a bureaucrat opened a motorcycle brochure, read the top speed figure, and reportedly reached for the telephone. The motorcycle was the Suzuki Hayabusa. The top speed was officially listed as a number so extraordinary that multiple national governments immediately began drafting legislation to remove it from public roads entirely. This is the story of the machine that was so fast that the entire global motorcycle industry was forced to reach a gentleman's agreement to prevent government intervention. And the remarkable part is that the Hayabusa is still being sold today and still carrying a reputation that no amount of time or regulation has managed to diminish. Let's get started. Chapter 1. How the Hayabusa came to exist. In the mid-1990s, Suzuki's engineering department was watching something deeply uncomfortable unfold. Honda had released the CBR 900RR Fireblade in 1992 and redefined what a production sport bike could weigh and handle. Kawasaki's ZX-9R was pushing top speed boundaries aggressively. The Japanese manufacturers were locked in an escalating performance competition that the industry press was calling the Speed Wars. And Suzuki was watching from the sidelines while Honda and Kawasaki traded the title of world's fastest production motorcycle with the casual frequency of a tennis match. Suzuki's response was decisive and audacious. Rather than incrementally improving an existing platform, they assembled a dedicated engineering team with a specific brief: build the fastest production motorcycle on Earth. Not marginally faster, not fractionally quicker, definitively fastest, by a margin so large that the competition would require a fundamental rethink rather than a simple tune to respond. The project consumed years of intensive development and considerable financial investment from a manufacturer that clearly understood the commercial and reputational stakes involved in either succeeding spectacularly or failing publicly at this specific ambition. The engineering team named their project after the Hayabusa, a Japanese peregrine falcon, the fastest bird on Earth, capable of diving at speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. The name was intentional, and the ambition it represented was completely literal rather than aspirationally metaphorical. The machine they designed used a 1,029 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled four-cylinder engine producing 173 horsepower in a chassis so aerodynamically refined that the bodywork was developed in a wind tunnel specifically to minimize drag at sustained high speeds. The drag coefficient achieved was so low that Suzuki's engineers reportedly described the result as embarrassingly good compared to contemporary automotive standards at the time. Every single design decision was subordinated to the primary objective of maximum speed. The fuel tank shape, the seat profile, the mirror positioning, the instrument cluster integration, all were optimized for aerodynamic efficiency in a way that production motorcycles had not previously been subjected to. The result was a machine that looked unlike anything else on a showroom floor and performed in a way that confirmed the visual promise immediately, dramatically, and in some cases, terrifyingly for riders who underestimated what they were sitting on. If this story is already making your pulse spike, hit that like button. Right now, the part where governments actually tried to ban it is coming up very soon. One tap, do it. The machine looked unlike anything else on a showroom floor and performed in a way that confirmed the visual promise immediately and dramatically. But what exactly did that performance look like on a measured straight? The number is more shocking than you expect. Chapter 2. The original top speed and what made it revolutionary. The 1999 Suzuki Hayabusa GSX 1300R was independently tested by multiple publications and achieved a verified top speed of approximately 186 miles per hour. Some tests recorded figures approaching 190 miles per hour, depending on conditions and rider position. To understand why this number detonated across the motorcycle world, consider that the previous benchmark, the Honda CBR 900RR, produced approximately 165 miles per hour at its absolute limit. The Hayabusa did not nudge the record forward. It obliterated it by a margin that made the previous champion look leisurely by direct comparison. The technical architecture that produced this performance was genuinely revolutionary for production motorcycle standards in 1999. The ram air induction system channeled air pressure in at high speeds directly into the airbox, increasing effective engine output as speed rose, essentially making the motorcycle more powerful the faster it traveled. This characteristic meant that the Hayabusa was at its most capable in precisely the conditions where most production machines were approaching the outer limits of their engineering envelope. The aerodynamic bodywork reduced drag to a degree that allowed the engine's output to translate into top speed with an efficiency that contemporary competitors had absolutely no answer for, regardless of their own engineering ambitions. The integrated design philosophy, where every body panel, every intake routing, and every exhaust configuration was made in service of maximum speed, was a level of engineering coherence that the motorcycle industry had not previously seen in a production machine available for public purchase at a price accessible to ordinary enthusiasts rather than commissioned specialists with unlimited budgets. The motorcycle weighed approximately 473 pounds wet and produced torque figures that made highway riding feel like a physics demonstration that most riders were academically unprepared for. Press tests from 1999 described the acceleration experience between 60 and 100 miles per hour as having no parallel in production motorcycling, a characteristic that journalists struggled to describe without resorting to automotive rather than motorcycle reference points. The Hayabusa did not merely go fast, it redefined what fast meant in a production context available to anyone with a motorcycle license and the asking price. And when governments started reading those press tests, something very uncomfortable happened in offices across 3 continents. Chapter 3. The International Reaction. The response from governments was swift and in some cases spectacular in its alarm. Germany, whose unrestricted Autobahn network represented the most obvious venue for exploring the Hayabusa's capabilities on public roads, was among the first to raise serious legislative concerns. German transport authorities publicly discussed speed restrictions and import limitations in terms that made Suzuki's European distributors deeply nervous and the wider Japanese industry acutely attentive to developments. The United Kingdom government actively considered legislation introducing mandatory speed limiters on motorcycles exceeding a specified power output. The British debate reached parliamentary committee level, with members of parliament raising questions specifically referencing the Hayabusa by name, a level of individual product notoriety in legislative proceedings that is extraordinarily rare for any consumer product at any price point. Australia's state transport authorities reviewed their vehicle standards to assess whether machines of this specification could be legally imported without modification, with several jurisdictions discussing outright prohibition. The United States saw insurance industry bodies raise formal concerns, with several insurers immediately placing the Hayabusa in the highest possible premium category, regardless of rider history or demonstrated experience. The sheer momentum of governmental concern across multiple major markets created a genuine commercial threat to the continued availability of the Hayabusa and to the entire hyperbike category it had single-handedly created through one audacious engineering program. The industry needed a solution, and what they came up with was something nobody had ever tried before in the history of consumer products. What happened next saved the Hayabusa and changed the motorcycle industry permanently. Chapter 4. The Gentleman's Agreement. In 2000, the major Japanese manufacturers, Suzuki, Honda, Kawasaki, and Yamaha, along with European manufacturers including BMW, Ducati, and Triumph, reached what became known as the Gentleman's Agreement. This was a voluntary accord, not a legal requirement, not a government mandate, but a self-imposed industry commitment to limit the electronically governed top speed of production motorcycles to 186 miles per hour, regardless of the mechanical capability of the underlying machine. The agreement was administered through the German and British motorcycle industry associations. It was entirely voluntary. Any manufacturer could withdraw at any time without legal consequence. It was self-policed. No independent verification authority monitored compliance, and yet it was extraordinarily effective. No signatory manufacturer produced a production motorcycle officially exceeding 186 miles per hour for the subsequent 2 decades. This record of voluntary compliance stands as one of the most successful examples of industry self-regulation in the history of consumer products globally across any industry sector. In practice, the Hayabusa's electronic speed limiter engaged at approximately 186 miles per hour, regardless of whether the engine had the mechanical capacity to continue accelerating. The irony appreciated by every performance rider who understood the engineering was that the limiter was the only thing preventing the Hayabusa from going considerably faster. The machine was not at its mechanical limit when the electronics intervened. It was being managed rather than exhausted. The untapped capability beneath that electronic ceiling became part of the Hayabusa's enduring mystique among riders who understood the technical reality and appreciated the engineering restraint it represented. The agreement prevented the legislative responses that multiple governments had been actively preparing. By voluntarily capping performance at a figure that governments found acceptable, the manufacturers removed the primary justification for regulatory intervention and preserved their ability to sell performance machines in major markets for the following generation of riders who would inherit the Hayabusa's legacy. If the story of how an entire industry united to save one motorcycle has you hooked, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell right now. The 3 generations of evolution coming up will show you exactly how the Hayabusa survived and thrived across 25 years of production. Subscribe now. The agreement held. The governments backed down. And Suzuki quietly set about making the Hayabusa even better. What happened across the next 3 generations is a masterclass in how to keep a legend alive without betraying the original vision. Chapter 5. 3 Generations of Evolution. The Hayabusa has undergone 3 distinct generational updates since its introduction, each building on the original's foundation while addressing the specific criticisms and opportunities of its era. The first generation, produced from 1999 to 2007, established the template: the 1029cc engine, the muscular, organic aerodynamic bodywork, and the specification that made governments nervous. This generation is considered by purists as the most raw and characterful expression of the Hayabusa formula. Carbureted versions from the early production years are particularly valued by enthusiasts who prefer the direct, mechanical character of pre-injection tuning. First-generation Hayabusas have a tactile quality at high revolutions that fuel-injected versions smooth away in pursuit of refinement. The rawness is the point for buyers who specifically seek this generation. The second generation, introduced in 2008, was a comprehensive engineering update. Displacement increased to 1,340 cubic centimeters, producing approximately 197 horsepower at peak output. Fuel injection replaced carburetors, suspension and braking systems were substantially upgraded, and the chassis geometry was refined for improved high-speed stability. The bodywork evolved while preserving the instantly recognizable profile. This generation added sophistication without diminishing the essential character that had made the original legendary across global markets over the preceding decade. The third generation, launched in 2021, brought the Hayabusa into the modern electronics era. The 1340cc engine was completely revised internally to meet Euro 5 emission standards while maintaining the performance character the platform had built its reputation upon over 2 decades of continuous production. Power output is approximately 188 horsepower with a sophisticated electronics package, including 3 power modes, 3 engine brake control settings, traction control, launch control, anti-wheelie control, and a bi-directional quick shifter. The cornering ABS system is among the most sophisticated available on any production motorcycle at any price point in the current market. 3 generations, 25 years, 1 consistent mission. But why did it stay iconic long after the speed wars that created it were completely over? The answer is more interesting and more human than you think. Chapter 6. Why it remained iconic after the speed wars. The speed wars era effectively ended with the gentleman's agreement. Once all major manufacturers were electronically limited to the same top speed, the specific arms race that had created the Hayabusa lost its competitive justification. And yet the Hayabusa not only survived, but thrived in ways that purely rational analysis would not have predicted from a machine whose founding context had disappeared. The explanation is cultural rather than mechanical. In North America, it became deeply embedded in the custom motorcycle scene, with the aftermarket industry producing thousands of unique interpretations of the platform across every aesthetic direction imaginable. In Japan, it maintained aspirational status as the machine that defined a generation's understanding of motorcycle performance. In Europe, it occupied a peculiar prestige position as the machine that had made governments nervous, a distinction that enhanced rather than diminished its appeal to riders who valued that specific heritage and the story it told about the machine they were riding. The Hayabusa also developed a devoted long-distance touring following that surprised commentators who expected a machine of its specification to attract exclusively short-duration performance riders interested only in straight-line velocity. The combination of substantial wind protection from the full fairing, an upright for its class riding position, and an engine producing massive torques at low revolutions made the Hayabusa genuinely comfortable for extended highway distances in a way that pure sport bikes could not honestly claim with equivalent conviction. This dual character of ultimate performance machine and surprisingly capable tourer created a broader and more loyal ownership demographic than the specification alone suggested. The reputation outlasted the context that created it, and today, the current model is selling to a buyer that the original engineers of 1999 would find completely fascinating. Chapter 7. The current model, specs, price, and who it suits. The 2021 to present Hayabusa represents the most technologically sophisticated version in its 25-year history. The 1,340cc inline four-cylinder engine produces approximately 188 horsepower and 150 newton-meters of torque, delivered through a considerably more refined electronics package that makes the power more usable across a wider range of conditions and rider skill levels than any previous generation managed. New pricing in the United States sits at approximately $17,499. Seat height is 31.1 inches. Weight is approximately 582 pounds wet. The riding position is more upright than a dedicated sport machine and considerably more comfortable for sustained highway distances than the specification suggests to a rider who has not yet experienced it directly. The wide, comfortable seat and substantial fairing wind protection combine to make the Hayabusa a genuinely viable long-distance machine in a way that consistently surprises riders experiencing the reality for the first time. The Hayabusa in 2025 suits a specific rider profile most effectively. It is the machine for the experienced rider, ideally 35 and older, who wants a definitive statement machine with genuine performance capability, a rich heritage narrative, and surprising long-distance practicality. It is not the machine for newer riders, regardless of enthusiasm, and it is not the machine for riders who will be unsatisfied unless they regularly use the performance in environments where it can be safely explored without legal or physical consequences. You know what it is and who it suits. Now let us talk about where to find one and precisely what to pay across each generation without making an expensive mistake. Chapter 8. Where to buy used and what to pay. The Hayabusa used market divides cleanly across 3 generations, with distinct pricing dynamics and specific inspection priorities for each. First generation examples from 1999 to 2007 present between $3,500 and $6,500 for clean examples with documented history. These machines are approaching collector status with prices firming rather than declining as supply of unmolested examples contracts steadily. Inspect the frame carefully for previous crash damage, given the performance potential and the statistical reality that some examples have been used hard. Check carburetor synchronization on pre-injection models, inspect brake discs for warping, and verify fork seals for leaks. The swing arm bearings on high-mileage examples are a known wear item, inexpensive to replace, but uncomfortable to discover unexpectedly at highway speeds. Second-generation examples from 2008 to 2020 present between $5,000 and $10,000. This generation offers the best value proposition for riders wanting modern fuel injection without the premium of current generation pricing. Inspect the throttle body synchronization, which significantly affects smooth low-speed operation, the exhaust system for corrosion at the lower collector, and the electrical system for evidence of unprofessional aftermarket modification that was not executed with appropriate technical knowledge. Third-generation examples from 2021 present between $11,000 and $15,000 for low-mileage examples. Confirm the comprehensive electronics package operates correctly across all modes without stored fault codes. Verify the bidirectional quick shifter functions smoothly in both directions under realistic conditions, and check that the cornering ABS has not been tampered with by previous owners who found its intervention intrusive during spirited riding. All generations benefit significantly from a pre-purchase inspection by a Suzuki familiar mechanic who understands the specific failure modes of each era and can distinguish between normal age-related wear and the damage patterns associated with machines ridden at or near their performance limits for sustained periods. The Hayabusa community maintains extensive online resources identifying generation-specific issues with remarkable detail and brutal honesty. Consulting these resources before committing to a specific example is the most financially intelligent preparatory step any prospective buyer can take, regardless of their mechanical experience or confidence level. The Hayabusa is not simply a fast motorcycle. It is the machine that changed what fast meant, frightened governments into unprecedented action, unified a global industry into voluntary restraint, and then outlasted every competitive and regulatory challenge thrown at it across a quarter century of production. That is not a specification. That is a legacy. And legacies hold their value considerably better than machines that are merely quick. If this breakdown gave you everything you needed to understand why the Hayabusa matters, the video showing on your screen right now for more content that will protect your money and expand your knowledge. Keep the rubber side down, and I will see you in the next one.